Hello, and welcome to Authentic Points of View podcast. I am Danielle Boer, and this is McKenna. I have forgotten the last few episodes to introduce. I'm just assuming that you've known me from the other seasons, but you might not. You might be new. So I'm really excited to be here. Was just talking with a guest backstage that we just both kind of found out that it's daylight savings time. I just found out a couple hours ago. Did not know. So that's exciting. All right. You ready?
Yes.
All right, we're ready. So Bambi Lynn is an author, speaker, blogger, and prayer coach. She's also a few more things, but that's a little bit to introduce her.
Welcome to the show, Bambi Lynn.
Hello.
I definitely have a list. I think as a mother, you never give up that long list of the things that you are.
Yeah, that's how I am too. I like my list is long, and I'm like, well, I could take something off of the list, but
Yeah. It's like, introduce yourself. Well, how many aspects do you want of me?
Yeah, I know because you're a mom and a grandmother, so am I, which is cool. So I have never homeschooled, so I find it fascinating and impressive. I know lots of my friends. My friend homeschooled 10 kids at one time. But I think it's impressive that you did it for your kids for like 27 years total. How did you juggle everything? And
go ahead.
Yeah, were you a single mom at the time or?
For most of it, I was a single mom. For the beginning, I was not. And I homeschooled when the government and the school systems and everybody said, no, we're not going to homeschool. And it's just kind of funny how life changed, during the pandemic. The school was okay with all these moms homeschooling. But years ago, when I started in 1991, homeschooling my kids. And that was the time that you couldn't leave before 2:30. You couldn't leave your house before 2:30 because people would be wondering, why do you have your kids around? It was more of they spied on you a little bit more because why in the world would anybody, homeschool their kids? So in the beginning, my oldest daughter, she was 5. We had decided to homeschool, and it actually came to me in a dream, which is so weird. My ex-husband and I were talking, and I said, I don't really want to send her to school. He went to Christian school, and he didn't want to send her to her Christian school. And I didn't want to send her to our public school because at the time, which now it's huge, at the time, outcome-based education started. And that was whatever a child felt at that moment. So if the child felt that 2 + 2 is 5 at that moment, just let him think that for a moment, and he'll change his mind later on. So that's kind of like the basis of it. And I decided I just didn't want to, but my ex-husband said, we're not going to homeschool. And I actually had a dream. We were all walking, all the moms were walking to this, the bus stop, putting their kids on the bus. I went to kiss my daughter's forehead and put her on the bus, and the door closed and said, no. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I woke my ex-husband up in the middle of the night, and I said, I think we're supposed to homeschool. He goes, I'll give you 6 months. He goes, if you have a reading in 6 months, then we'll reevaluate. And it was 27 years later, he left. The only thing that was constant in my life was homeschooling. Wow. For all those years.
Well, good for you for doing that, because during the pandemic, I did not have the patience for even one kid, but she was actually used to doing it the other way. So it was hard. None of them could focus, and it was just, plus the school was learning what to do because they just got thrown into it. And so it was very challenging, but
absolutely. And us mothers that homeschooled our kids all the way through, we did think it was kind of comical. That all of a sudden now the school system's like, okay, we can homeschool. And now they're even advocating it today. They're still advocating, homeschooling. But yet when I was homeschooling, they were ready to put us in jail. So it's just a huge turnaround.
if any, did you face while homeschooling your
That actually answered some of it. Go ahead, speak up a little bit.
Oh. What struggles, if any, did you face while homeschooling your kids?
You kind of answered the question.
Oh
but-
my goodness, what struggles? Well, there was a lot of struggles because I think that homeschooling really teaches parents, more than it's teaching our kids. I think that sometimes because parents, we don't necessarily always put on that hat. We use that time for other people to teach our kids because we feel like there's no way that we can do it. So there was times, is there times in your life that your mommy gets upset and she yells at you and she gets frustrated? Well, it's no different with being the parent and the teacher at the same time. There wasn't always times that it was like all peachy king and I was like, oh, this is so cute. There were times that it was a struggle. There were times that my kids didn't want to listen. There were times that I had so much to do on my plate and I still had to homeschool. So there was a lot of different dynamics. You had to learn the dynamics of your household and you had to learn the dynamics of each one of your children. They all don't learn alike. And that was very difficult.
Oh my goodness. I can imagine. My second son, I love him. He's doing awesome now. He's 21. He'll be 22. But he has a lot of like learning disabilities and different diagnoses. So no offense to him. Love him bunches, but he learned way different. So that would have been very difficult for me to figure out. Like my oldest one learned much easier. And at first there was just them two, but I was also a single mom. And then I got a 4-year-old. I didn't get him. That sounds really weird. But my ex-husband, who became my husband, moved in with his 4-year-old. So then we became like an instant blended family. And he learned very easily as well. But the second one, it was a really hard dynamic. And we were very blessed that he went to occupational therapy and got an IEP at school and all that. But if I had to try to juggle that myself, it would have been really hard because
I have 6 kids and 3 of my children homeschool their children now. And 3 of them say absolutely no way. That you have, like the daughter that I'm here now with my son that's away, she homeschools her 4 boys. And it is very difficult because you can't, school was designed for girls, the way that a girl learns. Sitting down, doing paperwork, doing workbooks. That's something a girl really likes, more or less, the majority. And a boy needs to be active. He needs to be touching things. He needs to be experiencing things. So my daughter is learning. My daughter-in-law is learning. You can't just do a book with these boys. You have to go out and get into the mud. You have to go out and make the models. You have to go out and do the things in order for them to learn. I was a unit study mom, which meant that my kids I'd say, okay, what do you guys want to learn about? And they would say, let's learn about pirates. So then we would go to the library and we would get every single book we could on pirates. We would look up every kind of activity that we can do. And our whole school for, 4 weeks would be based on pirates. So all of our crafts, all of our history, all of our science, everything would be based on math. We made maps. They had to go find the treasure. They had to make costumes, things like that. So I tried to make it a little bit more fun because they just couldn't just learn sitting down, writing in a book. And now my 2 sons are, they're both in the military. They're both serving our country. And they say that they had the best education that they could have ever thought of.
That's awesome. Thank you for their service.
You're welcome.
I was a military brat myself. My dad was in for 20 plus years. So I really
my daughter is moving to Alaska in July. So
wow.
My 37-year-old daughter, my oldest daughter, and she's taken my 2 oldest grandchildren, and they're moving to Alaska for 3 years. So not very happy.
That's really far. We lived in Germany twice, so we were really far as well from everybody. In the whole times we lived there, I don't remember coming back but once. Like my great grandmother passed away. And so, but I was really little. I was 4, 5, and 6 that time. But that's the only time I remember coming back. But it was really tricky and hard because my sister is my half sister. She's my dad's oldest child from his first marriage. So she didn't get to come with us. So it was really like, it was hard. Like we would be away for so many, well, 3 years essentially, but that's a long time. Like
it is a long time.
Yeah. So I really give props to everyone who, you know, the spouses, the children, the actual people in the military. I was supposed to go in the military. That's so funny. It didn't work out, but but
and my daughter, there's 3 bases in Alaska. And they happen to be at the very tip of Alaska. So we are driving from Georgia to Alaska because their stuff gets delivered. Their stuff gets delivered 2 months prior. So we have to drive. And when we get into Alaska, we have to take a ferry for 36 hours to get into Alaska. Then when we get into Alaska, we have to drive 1,500 miles to get to their base. And that is about 14 hours. So almost the whole length of Alaska. But she will be near the Arctic Circle. She's an hour from the Arctic Circle and she's 45 minutes from the North Pole. So this is and I'm planning our whole trip. I'm going with her just to go do and then I'm flying back, but I'm planning the whole trip, along the path. And that's the other thing about homeschooling is that everything becomes school. Everything becomes an adventure. Everything becomes, something that you've learned that you get to go see it. So we are going to be traveling through 10 states, I think. And in one of the states in Idaho, do you know what Idaho is known for? Idaho is known for?
Is it potatoes?
Idaho. Potatoes? Do you know what we're going to do? We are going to stay in an Idaho potato at an Airbnb. It's shaped like a potato.
That's so cool.
Isn't that so cool? Yep.
It's
shaped like a potato. So yeah, when you get off, Google the Idaho potato Airbnb and it will show you.
That's really neat.
That's so cool.
We're having school now for you.
I think that in Alaska or some cold place, I can't remember where it is, but they have like a ice house and it's like all ice.
Alaska does have one. Yes. They do have it in some other states do them in the some, for the, I do know like, New York. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and we have a sculptures, and ice sculptures that are made. But yes, there is a place that in Alaska that you actually can stay the night at the ice castle and sleep on a nice bed.
Oh,
isn't that cool?
Do you have a question about Alaska or anything? I have one. It's so how. I know she hasn't done it yet, but I've always asked people because I love talking to my patients and I'll ask them questions. And if they are in the military, we'll talk about it. And if they ever say they've been in Alaska, I ask like the adjustment to the light, like how it's light for so many hours and then it's dark for so many hours.
You have to buy a certain light to help you. So they've started buying red lights. They're called red lights. That gets your body used to the fact that it's happening. And my daughter said, Mom, it's not like pitch black. It's just always dusk for that 6 months. Could you imagine living and not seeing sunshine for 6 months? And it happens during the
Wow. Yeah. That makes it more cold, I would assume.
I would think so. So that will take a huge adjustment. It's huge adjustment, for them. And I just hope they're able to do it. But both of my grandsons are homeschooled. So they are looking for the adventure, that they get to see. And military is a tough life to live, for everybody around. But the places that you get to see, and I've told my kids when they've gone to different duty stations, I've told them, look up everything you can possibly do. at those stations and the surrounding areas. Take full advantage of the opportunities that you have to, to learn things and to do things that you're not going to be able to do any other time.
Yeah, it's a really cool childhood. Well, it depends on your perspective. So my brother had OCD very severely, and so he hated it. I loved it. And I was on the welcoming committee in Germany, and he hated every part of it. He didn't understand the language. He also probably had some like disabilities, but we didn't know back then. He kind of struggled, but wouldn't talk about it. But so I was the opposite of him, and I would go on field trips to France and all this stuff, and it was so cool. And I like on the weekend we would go to a different country or go to the castles, and I just like was so blessed and probably didn't realize it at the time because I was young.
Right.
But I'm so grateful now for those experiences. I think I've been to more countries than I've been to states in the United States. So
that is awesome. That's awesome. I've been to 43 states in the United States. So I have 7 left. And by the time I take the trip with my daughter, I will only have 1 state left that I haven't gone to, which is so weird, which is Oklahoma. I don't understand. Really? I've never been to Oklahoma, but it's only 1 state. And when you homeschool, I was gonna ask you if you would do this. That when I homeschooled my kids, we learned about the covered wagon. We learned about the Oregon Trail. So I found an opportunity for us to be able to go on a covered wagon, for 2 nights and 3 days. And we drove and we had slept in a tent. And do you know who Amish are?
Yeah.
Do you know who the Amish are?
Yeah.
So every night the Amish would feed us. So that was their responsibility. So our wagons would go into the Amish community and the Amish would feed us, but we would get into a field. Well, it rained for 3 days, the whole entire time that we were there. So we had to go through this path in order to get to those, our food. So in that path was mud and rain and horse manure. And I had to decide with my kids, my 2 boys at the time, we had to decide what are we going to do because we had really nice shoes and socks on. And I had to choose whether we were going to take our shoes and socks off and walk in the mud and the horse manure and the rain to get to our food, or were we going to go home and take away and not have this project? What do you think you would do?
What would you do?
Leave.
I
don't want to walk in horse manure. That's not.
You know what we did? We took our shoes and socks off and stayed.
That's cool.
But do you know what else happened? It was my boys now are 25 years old, and they still, every time we're together, they still laugh and giggle about the fact that we stayed and we walked in horse poop for 3 days. And you know how sometimes your feet are really rough? Well, when you walk in horse poop, they become really soft.
Ooh, it's a moisturizer.
We had a really good pedicure.
A free one, I guess.
We had a free pedicure.
So what tips would you give to parents or caregivers or whoever is raising the children, could be grandparents, whoever, that want to homeschool?
I would tell them that make sure it's something that you really want to do. Don't just do it because everybody else is doing it around you. Make sure it's something that you really want to do and that you're passionate about. And then look at it, the fact that if you're going to try it for a year, you have 365 days in that year. If you fail the first day, who cares? These are your children. These are your offspring. These are children that you created, and you know them better than any other person in this world. So don't do it the way that everybody else does it. I remember when I first started homeschooling, we had a classroom and desks and it looked like a kindergarten room, when we first started. And then it got to be, we would go and have our school day on a picnic. We would then go to a park and bring a blanket. Wherever you want to do with your own children, do it that way. And love the ideas and let them be part of the homeschooling. Don't always have it that what you're going to teach and you get so regiment because you're afraid, that we have government looking behind us. Pick topics that they want to do. Have fun. It doesn't always have to be about the books, but it can be about walking and poop and learning an experience that, we could have never learned before. So I would just say, and find your tribe, find the people around you that support you and that love you through it, because there's going to be times that you're going to feel like a failure. There's going to be times that your children are going to, they're going to know how to do something one day. And then for some reason, the next day they have no idea and they look like aliens as if you've never even taught them anything. And you're like, what? Yeah. Yeah. Like I remember when my daughter was 5, we were learning how to count by nickels. So I got all these nickels and we were counting and she was having a blast counting them. But for some reason, the next day when I pulled the nickels out again, what are these? I don't know how to do that. And just try not to get angry over it and frustrated over it. Just, put the nickels back in the jar and go do something different. Don't do what I did. I pulled her hair.
Oh. You're like, what nickel is.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. And be honest with the frustrations. In life, I think that the problem that we have is that people don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to be vulnerable to say that this is really hard. We're raising the next generation. And it's not always easy. And we don't always have it together. And we don't always have this cute little, sometimes we have tempers. Sometimes we want to throw brushes. Sometimes we want to pound our feet. Sometimes, and just give yourself some grace, but be honest. I just feel like as parents, even if you're just, even if you're a parent, not even a homeschooling parent, find your tribe that you can be honest with, because this is hard. Parenting is a tough, tough job. And when we have to do it alone and we have to do it with preconceived ideas and we can't tell people how we're struggling, it becomes even harder. Give yourself some grace and give yourself, some slack. This is a tough, tough job and you're not going to do it perfect. And you know what? When your children grow up, you're going to have some heroes in your life that say, oh my goodness, my mommy did such an amazing job. I love her to pieces. And then you're going to have some of your children go, I didn't like anything about, my mom and homeschooling me. So you have some villains and some heroes. Just have more children than one. So you have somebody else that likes you.
You have a better chance. Your odds are great.
Why do you think I got 6 children? Do you think?
At least one is gonna like this idea.
At least one's gonna like me.
That's right.
When did you become an author, and what's your latest book about?
When did I become an author? Well, do you know how old do you think I am?
Uh-oh. Don't guess.
I've been told not to guess or not to ask. So
I'm asking you, how old do you think I am?
49.
Whoa, I just love you. Nope, I'm 55.
Oh, wow, you look great.
I'm 55 years old and I wrote my very first book at 52. It took me to 52
That's
years
great.
old. Yeah, so I wrote my story. I wrote about what happened to me as a little girl. I wrote about the trauma that I went through, throughout my life, and the bullying and the hurts and the pains that I went through. And what I did is that I used my little rag doll. My rag doll was named Josephine. And she was my security blanket. She was the one that knew my secrets. Do you have a security blanket? Or a doll or
my dog and my best friend is my security.
So and those are things that you can go and so my doll, Josephine Priscilla, she was a rag doll that my mother gave to me when I was 6 years old, and she became my security blanket. She was the one that knew all the secrets of the things that had happened to me as a little girl. So at 52 years old, I wrote my story and I used her as telling the story. Then at 53, so I wrote that at 52. Then at 53, I wrote The Treasures of My Heart, which is a book that when things are going on in your life that just aren't great, and there's storms, but there's some really good things that happen when you're going through some storms in your life. And so I wrote about the different storms and the treasures that happened and were given to me during the storm. Then I wrote a third book that comes out in June. And that book is about, I wrote about 29 different women in the Bible, and I made them relatable today. I talked about their stories on what would happen today. So I talked about single parenthood. I talked about, abuse. I talked about blended families using stories that were in the Bible. And now I'm a storyteller. I go out around and I go and speak to people, and I use storytelling to be able to open people up, to be able to realize that they're not alone.
That's super
I
awesome.
won an award. Yeah.
That's
I did
great.
win an award on my first book.
That's awesome. Did you submit it to somewhere, or did they find you?
I submitted it, and then they gave me a gold medal on my on the cover of my book, and then they gave me a silver on my writing. But when I was in 7th grade, which was a long time ago, I had a 7th grade English teacher that she called me into her office, and she told me that, she said, Bambi, you have such a gift of storytelling, and someday you're going to write a book and you're going to become an author and you're going to represent this school. And at that time, we didn't talk that way when I was a little girl. Our parents didn't, put dreams into us or things like that. So I didn't even understand what that meant until I wrote my first book, and I realized, wow, yeah, I am representing, and I do have a gift to storytelling.
So awesome. It's a good feeling. I love doing it as well. I wrote a book in honor of my brother who passed away. And so I love, it's for children, but it actually could be for anybody. I say 10 and up, but it's awesome to talk about it, to actually become a speaker and like inspire people. It's such a good feeling. So what inspired you initially? You said you were good at it when you were in 7th grade, but then I don't want to say what took so long, but like kind of what was the delay to actually writing the first one? Were you working on it for a long time and then you finally did it, or what was the process?
No, it was something that I knew that I was going to write, but motherhood is in seasons. There's only so much that you can do in each season of your motherhood, and I was a single mom. I had 6 kids. We were very poor. We didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of other ambitions but to homeschool my kids and to find a way to make sure that my children didn't become a statistic, because we were a single family living in a city, that my children could have turned out something totally different than what they have. And that was my intention. That was my mission, is to make sure that I was raising kids first that were going to be able to make it out into this world. So that was my first responsibility. My second responsibility, and the reason why I didn't, is because I had some healing to do. I had a lot of healing to do because I didn't want to write my book and have everybody go, whoa, she's a hateful person. I didn't want people to read my book and feel the tension, in my story. I wanted them to read my book and realize and know my vulnerability and know that I wrote my story just to get my story out there. And then once I read my book for the first time and it was given to me and I read it for the whole night, I realized I wasn't that person anymore, but I wanted to go find those women that had gone through trauma, that hadn't started their journey. And I wanted to be that person that was vulnerable enough to share my story so that they can share theirs. So that was the purpose of my book, is to give other women the courage and the bravery and the vulnerability to be able to say, yes, that happened to me too, and find somebody to know that they can lock arms with.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because I feel like everybody should help people too, but you have to get to the point, because I'm a trauma and grief coach, and we're going to talk about your coaching in a second, that you just started. But I had to get to the point as well that I was healed. I didn't even talk about how my brother died for the longest time. I didn't do any of that stuff. I kind of was just skating through life. And then I went on a forgiveness journey, got certified as a life coach. First, I became a stand-up comedian. That was awesome. And then
Is she funny?
then
Is she funny?
funny looking.
Well, yeah, at home you are all the time.
Hey, at home. What about in public?
In public you are, but it's just random times.
Oh, it's probably more
Okay.
embarrassing.
Okay.
It's the wrong timing. Like we can be talking about something serious and then you'll bust a joke. Like,
No,
it's funny, but it's just not a good time.
not true.
Sometimes.
I don't agree.
You know
So-
what? My children say the same thing to me. So you know what? We're in good company because they say, Mom, you think you're funny, but you're really not funny. I'm like, I am hysterical and I'm laughing my butt off. And my children are staring at me. So yeah. I think
Yeah,
I'm
my
funny.
older ones. So my oldest one probably doesn't find anything funny about but she actually kind of humors me and will be nice sometimes. But I do probably embarrass her because I think I'll be funny in front of the kids, and they're all like, "Okay."
That's exactly what my kids do.
Yeah,
They're
it's
like, all
funny.
right, Mom.
All right. So, are you gonna bring this up?
What inspired you to become a prayer coach?
Because I wanted people to understand that their healing, their stories, they were those stories and the trauma and the things that we go through when we're young doesn't have to destroy the rest of our lives. You know, everybody has things that they're going to go through in their lives. And so my purpose is that I want you to understand that we've all been through something and it's been really hard and it's taken our breath away, but we don't have to live it anymore. And so my purpose of becoming a prayer life coach is to be able to take to the title of my program is healing through your story and finding your purpose. Because a lot of times you can't find the purpose in your life because you're so bogged down by what has happened to you. You're so bogged down of the pain of what has happened to you. So you don't start living. And so my heart's desire is for people to start living and realizing your trauma is not your death sentence, but it is your first aid kit to be able to make it on for the rest of your life. You take the things that have happened to you in your life, you grieve it, you let it go, and then you march forward and find the tools that you have that has been invented, that has been created to be able to help you and then to help people behind, in front of you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's beautiful. I like that you say that it's not the death sentence, that it's a first aid kit. And a lot of people, because I've been through a lot of trauma as well. So, and at the time you don't realize it. And like I just said, I didn't know that I wasn't healed. I was just like, I'm fine all the time.
Yeah.
And so then you look back and you're like, ooh, I was not fine. And sometimes you don't know what is the root cause of something. So you can.
And that's why I became a prayer coach. And that's why I became a prayer coach is so we can sit and pray about it and wait, and wait for the answer of why. There is a why in every answer. There is a why in everything. And there is, because I am a Christian, I believe that I don't believe that it's all that, we think that, oh, this is God's fault that this happened to me. I don't believe that it's God's fault, but I believe that he's going to use it. Bad people do bad things. And I just happen to be one of those people that they did bad things to. But I can learn from those bad things. And I wanted to stop being the person in the room that when I walked into the room, people would say, oh, she's the one that went through this. Now we got to hear her story again. We're here again. And it got to a point that I had to be sick and tired of being sick and tired of bringing up my pain all the time. And I had to start dealing with it. I had to stop being a victim of it. And I had to start dealing with it in order for me to grow into the person that I am today. 10 years ago, I wasn't this person. 10 years ago, I was still very broken. but I've been on this journey of becoming, and it's a journey. You know, it's you get that time to be able to wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And since I'm tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired, let's do something about it. And that's what I've done.
That's awesome. I'm proud of you, and
Thanks.
you're welcome. It's hard to do, but it is so amazing when you do it because you feel like so much better, and you're like, look what I've been missing out on. You know, like
Absolutely.
being able to live and be happy and not dwell on those things. And so
Absolutely. And
it's
not
a
have it,
great
it doesn't have to define you. You know, I have a client right now and she contacted me and she said, I just love this homework. And what I did is that for this week, she had to draw a house, you know, on her, you know, I send my clients a box of the things that we are going to work on, and we use them as props and metaphors and things like that. So I sent her a journal, I sent her my book. I sent her, you know, a thing to put together, which turned out to be a house. And she had to draw that house on a piece of paper. And then for the whole week, I wanted her to write down the adjectives, the feelings, the emotions that come from a house. And she said, the house that I'm living in. And I said, no, any house. How many times did you move? And she said, 12 times. I said, how did it make you feel that you moved 12 times? You know, how did it make you feel that you had to pack up all your stuff again and it had to be gone again? You know, what kind of things happen in that house? You know, people start thinking, you know, because she wants to write her memoir. What a great way to start that is to spend the week having to write down all those adjectives. And she contacted me today. She goes, I've never, ever would have thought, you know, to do that, you know, and to deal with those emotions of what moving did to me, or what happened within our four walls, what it did to me. Nobody's ever asked me. And that's my point is, you know, and then another thing that she does is that I took a puzzle and I switched the puzzle pieces around. So the puzzle pieces in one is not that puzzle. So we put the puzzle together and she notices that it's not, that the puzzle is not the same as the box. And she goes, well, why did you do that? I said, because we had an idea of what life was supposed to be like, and life was not what it turned out to be. But I want you to know that your life is just as precious, even though it's a different picture, even though it's a different puzzle, it's still just as important, you know, for your life. So my coaching is a little bit more hands-on, is a little bit more, you know, instead of just sitting, writing a journal, you know, kind of thing, it's a little bit more hands-on so they can think, you know, I sent her a cake, and you know, there's 3 ingredients in a cake. There's eggs, oil, and water. And when you're a Christian, you know, eggs represent, there's 3 in 1, represents the Trinity, represents that, you know, you have to have all of that in order to be shaken up and to be healed. And then the water represents the word of God. You know, you've got to walk through the forgiveness. And then the oil represents healing, and it's, you know, it's how it's poured over you. And when people in the church, they anoint you with oil, you know, kind of thing, you know, and then you stir it all up. You mix all of that up into a pot, and then you put it into the fire, because what happens in the fire, there's a sweetness that comes out after the fire. There's, you know, gold is made through fire, through the hottest fire you possibly do. And then you take this cake out and it's got a sweet aroma, because that's what happens when you go through the fire, but you come out and you're ready to deal with your pain.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah. None of this makes sense to you, does it, sweetheart?
Oh, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, she's very smart.
I'm trying to like make it that you can understand too. Like that woman just talked way over my head.
No. Unfortunately, she's her brothers are way older than her. So she's always been too advanced, not advanced in a bad way, but like she understands things more than kids her age sometimes. Well, now they all do. Honestly, like back when my son will be 24 on the 15th of this month, my oldest one. And so compared to him and now, no offense, he was very smart. He could count in 4 different languages when he was 5. He was very, very smart, but just there wasn't as much technology. So
Right.
now they have access to everything that they want to learn. Like you said, if she wants to know about the Oregon Trail, all she got to do is look it up on Google. But back then it wasn't like that. You have to like look in an encyclopedia, look in a dictionary, trust what people tell you, look in the books from
Exactly.
school, and a lot of the history and not even in there. So it's like things were missing. But you wouldn't know that if you just believed what you were told. You wouldn't know, you didn't have
Well, like
access.
one thing that I was told when I was a little girl, like I was so excited. One thing I was excited that my daughter was going to Alaska is because I was told that there was a road or there was a bridge that I can get to Russia, because Russia is only 53 miles from there. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, when I get there, I'm going to drive that 53 miles, get into Russia, hand them my passport, drink some hot chocolate, and then turn back around. Well, there's no bridge and there's no road. And I'm like, my whole entire life, I was told that there was a road. Now it is 53 miles and it is called the Bering Strait, and it gets frozen, but it's inside, her part, the part of Alaskan part of where I would go to Russia is in Siberia. So there is no little coffee shop for me to go get some coffee or some hot chocolate and then turn back around. The other thing is that in order to get into Russia, when you go, you have a passport, and when you have a passport, you can go to different countries. Well,
right.
Russia has it that you have to have a visa and a passport.
Wow.
You can't just have one or the other. So if I went there and I'm thinking, I'm going to drive this 53 miles and I'm going to go there, I'm going to go to a store there and I'm going to buy one of those hats, those hats that they wear because it's so cold. I was all excited that I was going to go to Russia, and there is no road and there is no bridge.
Yeah.
And when I was a little girl, we were taught that, Africa was a continent. I didn't know until I homeschooled my kids that Africa consists of 53 nations, or like 53 different states within Africa. I was taught that Africa was Africa until I became a homeschooler, and I realized Africa just wasn't Africa. Africa was like states, 53 different nations. South America, when we were kids, South America was South America. Well, South America consists of 13 countries within South America. Didn't know that until I started homeschooling my kids. Pretty weird.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I mean, that's the thing, is that hopefully now they're starting to learn more of the history. She doesn't like some of the, not to throw you on blast, but like she's learning about different countries now, and she's like, why do I have to learn this? And because she's in 6th grade and she's in some advanced classes. So it's important to know things. And I wish that I paid attention more, because sometimes, like, well, daylight saving time, but with other stuff, it's like I did not love geography, but that class, or social stuff, whatever. I loved science. So like I paid attention more and understood more. And I wish I would have like kind of delved into stuff and asked and found out more about those things, because it's interesting and amazing, like all the things that happen, and like we're all connected. So I wish I would have paid attention. It's not that I didn't pay attention. I got good grades, but it's just like it wasn't my thing, It wasn't like something that
we did it. When I homeschooled my kids, we did it that they had a passport, and that every country that we learned, I would put a sticker, or stamp their passport. And when we went into that country, we learned about what they ate, and we made that dinner. We learned how to make, fortune cookies. We learned how to make sushi. We learned whatever country we were in, we learned about that. Then we did all these costumes, or we made these poster boards so that my kids could get a feel for what it was. Because just sitting at a desk and just having to read, what about Vietnam, you're like, okay, this is really boring. But when you're eating their food And when you're tasting their snacks, and when you're doing things like that, you're making, their favorite dessert, and you're doing one of their traditions and how they celebrate, a holiday and everything, it does become fun, but you just got to make it fun.
Yeah, that does sound fun. And that's why I did botany. I'm not great with plants now that I'm an adult, but it was really cool because I got to see the process like live in action of how the plant, like, what do you got to do to take care of the plant? If you don't take care of it, it dies, this, and that. And so like the steps of it. And I love the hands-on, like in nursing school. I love biology 1 and 2, anatomy 1. Back then I didn't have to take anatomy 2, and I loved it so much that I took anatomy 2 for fun. And because I just loved that, plus as a nurse we need to know about the body and everything, but it was really cool to like see microbiology, it's kind of gross, but like in petri dishes and stuff like that. So like all that was hands-on, and I really enjoyed it, and it was easier to learn. Like you said, that's really good that you guys did that interactive.
If you could go back and tell your 13-year-old self, what would it be?
Say that again.
Speak up. You can speak up. No, go ahead.
If you could go back and tell your 13-year-old self something, what would you say?
To hang on. My 13-year-old self was a very broken little girl. I had some things that had happened to me as a little girl that at 13, I didn't even want to live. So I was very broken as a little girl. So I would tell that 13-year-old self to hang on, because life is about chapters, and this chapter is going to go by really, really fast, and that you're going to be okay. And you're going to turn out to be such an amazing person. So just hang on for dear life. I wish I could hug my 13-year-old self. I wish I could hug her and tell her that life is okay.
Me too. And so we started asking that question because a lot of interviews I was on, people would ask me something like that, not so much 13, but I think it's really important for us to like reflect. And even the other day I did a video on 22 years ago, I was living in a homeless shelter, pregnant with my second son, and my oldest one was 1.5, almost 2. And he had to go to the daycare there and all this stuff, and we had to adjust to that. And then when my son was born, I had an apartment in the shelter. But now all the things I accomplished, it's amazing. I never back then would have even thought that these are the things I would be doing. Nor would I have thought that my brother wouldn't be alive, So things have happened along the way to kind of mold us and make us who we are. And we do go through those things, but hopefully we heal and learn from them. And then using it to help people is an amazing thing.
And I would want my 13-year-old self to know that everything that happened to her wasn't her fault, because that 13-year-old little girl carried a lot of that pain and thought it was my fault. And I would want her to know. And I'd want any little girl that has ever gone through anything in their lives and they're carrying it and thinking that it's their fault. It's not. People choose to do nasty and mean things to you. But that doesn't mean that it has anything to do with you. It has to do with their dirtiness and who they are. It's not who you are. And if I could go back and I could tell that little girl, this isn't your fault, Bambi. This is the fault of somebody else. And that you can grow, and that person is just a dirty person.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that and being vulnerable and telling your story. So now that you are a coach and you've healed, what advice would you give someone about being there or becoming their authentic self?
I would first tell them to hire me as their coach. No. And I would tell, I tell people all the time, that you got a superhero cape because you survived your own story. You know, you don't need Batman. You don't need Wonder Woman. You don't need Catwoman. You got yourself. You know, I had a girlfriend that actually bought me a cape, and I stand in front of the mirror and I put a crown on people's heads, and I tell them that you are royalty, that no matter what you've gone through in your life, you are royalty. Put that cape around you and wear it with dignity, wear it with pride, because you are your own superhero in your life. You survived and you thrived, and now you're here to tell us about it. So that's what I would tell people. And I would tell people, well, I know that this is a different kind of show, but I did a ladies, I did a women's retreat yesterday. I was part of their summit, and I said, you know, as women my age, you know, I stand in the mirror totally naked and be excited of who you really are, because all the scars, all the pain, all the cellulite, everything that you have been through tells your story, and you are beautiful. You're beautiful of who you are and where you have been.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so this is for parents and kids 10 to 16.
Yep.
So
parents need to do that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. We're so excited that you were here and sharing your knowledge and your story. And well, there you go, healing with your story. So what where can we find you? Like, what's your website or whatever?
Do you want to guess what my website is?
I think I know it, so that wouldn't be a fair guess. Do you want to guess?
Well, do you think you know what my website is? It's called healingthroughstories.com.
We're going to put it up here on the bottom.
Yep, it's all one word, healingthroughstories.com.
She's typing it. So, okay.
And my books are there. And also, when you subscribe to my website, you can, there's a 10% pop-up that whatever you order on my website, when you subscribe, you get a 10% discount, except for Healing Through Story. Yep. Except for my program. My program is an 8-week program that it takes you through a journey of healing through your own story and finding your purpose. It is a $240 investment. 40 of it is that you would receive a box in the mail from me. And then it's, you know, it costs you more to go to a counselor, you know, every week now. And mine is a $25 program for 8 weeks, $25 a week. So I'm excited, and I'm so glad that I was able to come on, you know, today and share my story of my kids and homeschooling and, you know, what has happened in my life. You guys were such a joy and a pleasure to be part of.
Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you. I follow you since we scheduled this. I follow you, so I watch you know, your videos and stories. So it's really cool to get to meet you and say hello.
Did you subscribe to my website?
No, I haven't. I just followed you like on your Facebook.
Yeah, this week I wrote a blog about the trauma. I was asked to write for a magazine about the trauma that I went through as a child and how I've transformed, you know, through that. So that was our blog this week. So
oh, cool.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And have fun in Alaska, and please take a lot of breaks. That's a long drive.
It is a long drive. Thank you so much. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Wait, I gotta tell about